Say, kids, what time is it?
The future is coming on, it's coming on, it's coming on, it's coming on, it's coming on.
And here we are.
And here we are. Future Now.
Where are we today, Mrs. Future?
We are in Mount Shasta, where we arrived last night, and we're staying at Mary's Inn, the Mount Shasta Inn. And it's a wonderful old-fashioned guest house that has the entire third floor dedicated to us and our show today.
Yeah, we're very fortunate to be here. It's a beautiful house.
Yes, and it was recommended by our friend Bobby Spur, who is creating an amazing healing clinic down in Elkhorn, Monterey.
That's right. It was Bobby's connection with Mary here, who
That's
you'll be hearing
right.
later in the show. Was a trained RN who decided to leave it all to be in Mount Shasta here.
That's right. That's right.
We'll find out all about her.
Yes.
Her journey. Our hostess.
Yes, she's going to show up, we hope, at about 2 o'clock. So we'll get a
2:06.
chance to meet our hostess, Mary.
Yeah, it was quite amazing stories that she has to share too. Bobby, happy Easter beyond, and whatever you're celebrating, happy.
Yes, it looks like you guys are resident there. You know, they have the glowing light from Mount Shasta and through the door there, and it's amazing. It looks beautiful there. Yeah.
It is. It's gorgeous. And we have a view of the mountain from the house.
From our bed.
From our bed especially. It's amazing. We can't climb it yet. It's all covered in snow.
Yeah, you have to wait until probably July, I think.
Yeah. It's the most southern end of the Cascadian mountain range and volcanic ridge that stretches all the way to here.
And we were given great suggestions by various friends along the way to come down 197 and 97 along the Deschutes River for some of it.
Yeah, more of a Central Oregon experience.
Yes, and with the view of the mountains for most of the journey, you could see the whole mountain range.
Cascade Range was so clear yesterday.
Oh,
we had 100-mile
gorgeous.
plus visibility while driving.
Yeah.
You know, just and open plains, and you're in the high desert in Central Oregon.
Right.
And we spent 3 days there at this really classic turn of the 19th century built
Yes, the Balch Hotel, which is really, I think it's a local secret, but it's it's a 100-year-old classic hotel that is maintained for local events. I guess it houses probably 20 or 30 rooms worth of guests, and there's a lot of bathtubs, 3 stories, no elevator.
1906. It was the first building in the area that had power.
Right.
And it's because they built one of the first hydroelectric plants nearby.
The Dallas.
Even closer.
Dalles.
That's the big one on the Columbia. But before the Columbia went up, there was one in that little river, the first falls we stopped. The White Falls?
The White River Falls?
Yes, I think that was it. Very close to the Balch Hotel.
And that little hydroelectric plant was built in 1901.
Right. They started to have power at the turn of the century.
Yeah.
And the Balch was the first big building to get it.
Right
there. There's no other buildings much in Durfort.
Right. And so even though it is a classic historic building, it's also been rebuilt by modern day contractors who put in power and internet and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting. I look at a hotel like that and I ask them if they ever had phones in the rooms. And, they skipped the whole phone era. They never had phones in the room.
Right.
And they are different in the sense that if you go to any of the corporate hotel chains, you now have all kinds of things in your room. You have, like we were at the Hilton in Seattle for our wedding, and it was normal to have a coffee pot, a K-cup type machine, a refrigerator, a microwave even, and a safe, and a television screen, big flat screen in your hotel room. And that's kind of more de rigueur than normal American experience these days. But the Balch Hotel was like going back into the turn of the 19th century a little bit in the sense of the feel of the place. They had really antique furnishings. What was nice, though, is they had good bandwidth, and they had a very kind staff that was always very attentive to our needs and wants. Yeah, I think the funny thing was that we had to climb to the 3rd floor with all our equipment gear and stuff. And it must take 4 loads.
We're worried about not getting enough exercise.
No and then the owner of the hotel comes in and asks after the last load, he says, "Can I help you?" And
Probably
I said,
watching us
timing
the
is
whole
everything.
time.
Yeah, she was had good humor about it, though. She knew it was the end. And the trip from Port Townsend is an amazing town. I highly recommend any of you folks out there enjoy Port Townsend. If you like Santa Cruz, if you like San Francisco, if you like the Bay Area, you're going to like Port Townsend.
Well, and if you listen to our last show, we were in Port Townsend. That's when we were interviewing Jim Ruff and Cassie Furman
Right.
about the future of democracy. Not just better choice, but choice creation. Why
Yeah.
stop at choice when you can have choice creation?
Yeah, the next level of democracy. So that's last week's show.
Right.
Choice creation.
I'm
is the
pro-choice
next step
creation.
on our freedom path here.
I didn't tell you that, Rick Lukens called me right after he had dinner with him. And he was so excited he was able to show you his new office.
Yeah,
Port
that's a good
Townsend.
point, Bobby.
That's so
that's how I was
beautiful.
going to mention next was Rick Lukens. He was an old friend I
Yeah.
knew from Santa Cruz in the early 80s. And here he was established in Port Townsend doing amazing things. He has a company called United Earth Networks. United Earth Networks. And he's an event producer. He throws great events, and he's got this amazing place in Port Townsend to do it in, Fort Worden.
Right. So imagine what's going on in the Presidio.
Yeah, it's like the Presidio on so many levels.
Yeah, and translate it to Port Townsend just on the very northwest corner of America on the border of Canada.
Yeah, a big point that's all a ex-military base, and now something the people of Port Townsend enjoy as a park.
Yeah.
And it's got all kinds of weird things in it, like armament batteries from World War I times and
Right.
before.
Yeah, you can tell
Yeah.
there are all these places where they may have had cannons stationed in case ships came by that they weren't allowing in or things like
Well, it's
that.
like the Northwest Passage for entering into America. You go to past here down to Seattle and stuff, so you want to protect it.
Yeah, and a lot of people at the turn of the century were expecting Port Townsend to become Seattle. They thought this would be the hub of Washington, maybe turn into a capital or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. That was the really Twilight Zone-y aspect of that town, is that the downtown area looks a little like a mini New York City, from the turn of the 19th century.
It was designed by the city designer, plan designer was the French designer that designed Washington, D.C., and it's kind of a flat design plan, and it's exactly the same. The streets, the way they intersect and they come together in Port Townsend.
Yes, and as a result, it has this veneer of opulence and grandeur that actually doesn't really exist. It's kind of like a Hollywood set in a way, because the railroads chose not to go there. They went to Seattle instead and made Seattle the capital. And it was all about the transportation that shifted. So here they built it up
To be
and they
the
created
port capital.
the port capital of America out here, like Seattle is in so many ways. The railroads chose where they wanted to go,
Right.
That's how powerful they were. Like it wasn't the government, it was the railroads.
Right.
But probably a deal between
Well,
the
there's
two.
some other colorful aspects of the town too, is they have
Yeah.
downtown and they have uptown.
Yes, and that's a fascinating thing too. A big cliff that separates the two.
Yeah, giant stairway.
Yeah.
A few hundred steps.
A town at the bottom of the cliff and a town at the top of the cliff.
Right. And the uptown was where the kids going to school, and the moms with their baby buggies, and the people who weren't the downtown. I guess downtown was more full of hustlers and hookers and things
Yeah, it was
more of
sailors, right? There's a lot of sailors coming in from the Northwest.
It's a sailor's port.
It's like San Francisco in many ways.
Yeah, very much.
At the turn of the century. And so it was a little bowdy and wild. And you had to climb these steep stairs to get up to the nice town where all the merchants who ran the bowdy houses lived with their respectable families and such.
Yeah. So, anyway, it's part of the town's history. They're pretty proud of it.
Yes, yes, it's fun. It's really worth seeing. And then across the water, being Canada, you can only imagine the stories about that, like during the Prohibition and such. It's a town with deep roots in American history,
Indeed.
and the native population there as well. There's some stories about that.
Oh, yeah.
That go back
right.
even further.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't really delve too deeply into the native stories there, but
Well, they came out more in the museums along the Columbia. There were two interesting native museum coverages. The Mary Hill Museum has a whole wing dedicated to native history
yeah.
of the area. with artifacts. Actually, to the entire Native American culture in North America, they have different setups, panorama behind glass views of the lifestyle of the mostly Midwest and Southwest and California natives, as well as.
Well, in this area, they celebrate a lot of the history around the time of the Lewis and Clark expedition.
And that would be at the Mary Hill Museum, which is an interesting juxtaposition because here you have the native history and then they have a whole wing dedicated to Rodin.
Yeah.
And it's actual works of Rodin there that were brought here by the founders of the year, Sam Hill specifically.
Right.
It's connected with the railroads, I might add.
Yeah, so Sam Hill is the Washington version of Citizen Kane.
Hearst.
Yeah, William
Thank
Randolph.
you. Yeah, so William Randolph Hearst, imagine that is a developer up here in the Washington State area.
What, Sam Hill? What are you talking about?
Hill.
Yeah, I know.
What the
That's
Sam Hill are we talking about? That's a good question. Well, he just was a bigger-than-life guy who
Bigger
did
than life.
all kinds of development
and
up
bigger
here.
and bigger than death. You know what he did for his grave? He created Stonehenge.
Well, actually, it turned out he was buried near his
Near the
monument,
Stonehenge, yeah.
but he actually created the American Stonehenge
Yes.
as an honorarium,
A memorial for
the fallen dead of World War
war
I.
veterans. Right.
Because
Exactly.
he was a pacifist and a Quaker, and he thought that Stonehenge at the time was believed to have been a place where humans were sacrificed. And
Pagans were primitives.
right, and that belief at the time has been updated to accommodate more of the astronomical information that Stonehenge now is recognized for.
Astronomical clock.
Yeah,
Not a sacrificial.
but when Sam Hill created the American Stonehenge, he just created it to scale as a perfected and improved version of the original.
And
that
what it would
wasn't
look
in
like if it
ruins.
was not damaged.
Right.
Yeah, he had the original
And
plans.
he treated the Sarsen stones as tombstones. So there were about 14 local soldiers who had died, and
to
their
which it was
names
dedicated.
are there in plaques, and the whole thing is a beautiful.
And it's free to visit, and you can stay as long as you want. It's incredible panoramic views from this Stonehenge overlooking the Columbian River.
Yeah.
It's so gorgeous there, the gorge. It's like the Grand Canyon with water. A lot more water. And more green.
Yeah, different colored
more
stones,
green,
less red, more
life
black.
on the stones.
Yeah.
Volcanic.
Yeah, this is our first exploration of the Columbia River Gorge, and it's just wonderful. It's really inspiring.
Museums cover in depth American stories like Lewis and Clark expedition in detail.
Yeah, there's a place on the river, on the Columbia River, where Lewis and Clark had to carry their boats over these waterfalls.
Can you imagine that?
And now these waterfalls have been removed. Once they dammed the river in 1957 with a dam called the Dalles, Dalles, the gorge swelled so much that it no longer has these very famous traditional waterfalls called, I think, the Cielo waterfalls. In all of the museums, you've got these native fishermen with their nets catching giant salmon from these waterfalls. And now these waterfalls don't even exist anymore. You really have a sense of how much the nature here has been modified by
It's huge.
humans in the last 100 years.
And one other thing on Sam Hill, it was the turn of the 19th century, so he was big into automobiles.
Oh, yeah?
And he really wanted to make the most impressive panorama highway experience driving along the gorge, the Columbian Gorge.
Yeah.
And he did.
He made
It was-
incredible scenic highways.
Turn of the century marvel of automotive experience.
Yeah, so
And-
there's beautiful bridges.
Yeah, waterfalls near the bridges, and a lot of the old route, it's called Route 30 today, you can drive. And it's very popular with bicyclists.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if it's good weather, it's
we
incredible.
hear that it's really crowded in the summer. So much so that they're thinking of closing it down and charging admission, something like Yosemite or something.
But not yet. That's still available. Definitely, if you haven't been up to this part of the country, that's worth checking out.
we're
The border
so
of Washington
inspired.
and Oregon.
Yeah, we're very inspired by the Columbia Gorge scenery and the Cascadian Mountains. Beautiful.
Yeah, the whole thing. There's a certain romance up here of the ferry boats and taking ferries to go places. There's something very old-fashioned, romantic about it.
And they just have it down. It's easier than taking a bus. You just drive onto a ferry.
Take your car with you. What is it, $20,
Yeah, it's
including
about
us?
$20 for the car and two people.
Edmund.
Edmonds, Kingston Ferry.
Yeah, they take you out to Port Townsend quickly. Yeah, there's a ferry right to Canada, too. If you want to go there, it's probably a little bit more expensive. I haven't checked down to that one yet.
Yeah, no telling.
But there's a cheap one to Whitby Island,
Yeah.
just right across the bay, I guess, from Port Townsend.
So we're really enjoying our road trip on this corner of the United States, which we haven't really explored before.
And a shout out to Chris Olson, who we also met on the journey.
Yes.
Thanks to Brother Norm. Introduced us over a text chat.
Right. And he, of course, was very enthusiastic because the Maryhill Museum was just a half hour away from where he lived. And he thought that'd be a good time to come out and meet us for a drink, get to know some of his friend's family.
Yeah, that was a delightful connection. Thanks, Norm. Amazing breadth in his thinking and perception of the world. From being a Navy man to his multivariate understanding of metaphysics.
Right. Yeah, for us, it was very appropriate that he suggested that we all meet at the Maryhill Winery. And of course, we're not really very often drinking wine, but it's a nice place to meet people. It's a great view from the patio.
Yeah,
So,
if you like sipping wine and looking at gorgeous views, this is your place.
yeah, and it just so happened that they were doing wine tastings, and one of their wine was called Serendipity, which, of course, for us has been the theme of this whole trip.
That's a strange attractor, that name, I tell you.
Yes.
So we bought that bottle. Was it like $46, something like that?
Yes.
And you buy a bottle, you get free wine tasting.
Yeah, it was the price of admission.
Or $30
Yeah.
if you just want wine tasting. Yeah, it's a fascinating place. And we had a great conversation. We hung out for a couple hours and explored the universe together.
Yeah.
It's really fun.
Yeah, we really enjoyed our get together. And it was Chris who suggested the way to come south so that we stayed on 197 and 97, because I don't know that Google would have necessarily taken us that way. It was definitely the scenic view, and it was so beautiful. I was so glad that we went that way.
He did give, as an ex-Navy man who's worked a lot with boats, did say one thing about the disaster in Baltimore.
Oh, yes, right. We had a nice long chat about that,
as
and
a
he was
boat
quite
person.
familiar.
And I thought it would be worth passing that on.
Pass it on. Do tell.
He definitely feels like it was an accident, that all these conspiracy stories about spoofing GPS and such are not,
Just that.
Just that, yeah.
They're someone's imagination. Even though they're in the realm of the possible, it's very believable that this is just an accident that happened.
I guess what happens is that if you have a repeatable incidents, like if we suddenly see a number of ships doing this sort of thing, then we'd start to see a pattern here and recognize that maybe somebody is mucking with the GPS systems.
Wasn't there a big collapse of the freeway just out of Philadelphia last year? There was a truck that caught fire under the freeway and then caused the freeway to collapse. That was last year.
Yeah, well, I didn't make a connection there.
Well, I'm just thinking of disruptors to the East Coast commerce that seem like we're sure hearing about a lot more of them than we ever have before.
Yeah, well,
there were toxic train wrecks.
Cyber warfare is a real thing, and there's many forms of it, and hacking is well known since the beginning of all this. So we'll try to keep you on top of it. But I
But
think
as far as the Baltimore
this one,
thing,
I don't think is. We're not conspiracy theorists on this yet.
Well,
we'll see what kind of evidence comes in.
among the evidence that has been recognized as significant to point to it being truly a system failure and an accident is the fact that while the ship was docked in port for several days, it was having electrical issues. And the power failure that caused this crash was very consistent with the fact that they had been having some power issues while they were docked.
That definitely speaks of accident.
It does.
Even more so. And this is GPS spoofing. This is using GPS spoofing for moving the cargo ship to hit the bridge.
Okay, if you want to talk about
but
the
it was the
spoofing
GPS.
conspiracy theory,
and
Laura
Logan is deeply
has
into it.
been suggesting that her secret sources are quite convinced that there was GPS spoofing going on.
And Defense Intelligence Agencies.
Yeah, DIA. and that what that involved would be someone closer with a stronger GPS signal than the general one that ships would be tuning into.
Yeah, the Iranians are famous for using that for hijacking one of our drones.
And by giving the false GPS information, actually telling the boat that it was in a different part of the channel than it was, and the crew visually recognizing that they had a problem, but their instruments weren't confirming it, and so they had some kind of chaos about what to do to solve the problem. So her story says that they cut the power on the boat to solve the problem, and then that caused a bigger problem. Because I guess the standard protocol is if you're not on track, then you drop the anchor, you do a number of things.
Yeah, the anchor. And a ship of that size is going to take a long time before it stops from an anchor.
Oh, it doesn't stop. In fact, it was most of the reports we heard of said that a ship that large would just drag the anchor. It probably wouldn't stop.
Pretty much, yeah.
Cannabis is one of nature's most beneficial plants, so at Treehouse, we use it to build community. Hello, I'm Jenna from Treehouse Dispensary in SoCal. In addition to dispensing the finest cannabis products California has to offer and information on how best to use them, Treehouse hosts First Friday events to feature our community's local artists, makers, and activists. Just listen to Xavier.
That's right. Every First Friday, Treehouse hosts an open house, and everyone over 21 is invited. Walk right in, enjoy the tasty snacks, local musicians and artists, and meet cannabis experts who can help you get the maximum benefit from all the new edible, smokable, and topical cannabis products.
Please join us at the Treehouse every First Friday from 5 to 8 p.m. Walk right in and enjoy the work of local artists and musicians, learn more about the top cannabis varietals and products, and enjoy mixing and mingling at 3651 SoCal Drive in SoCal. For more information, go to ourtreehouse.io. We look forward to welcoming you to our Treehouse community.
Hello, I'm Carolyn. 25 years ago, my husband Rudy and I opened Charlie Hong Kong with the commitment to serve healthy food grown in healthy soil. Today, the healthy food we serve comes from the sacred land in Pajaro Valley, where Dick Peugeot and his Lakeside Organics grow the soil, and the soil grows the healthy plant that we serve to you. When you eat at Charlie Hong Kong, you eat healthy food, and it's delicious. Charlie Hong Kong, Santa Cruz.
When you need help escaping from an abusive relationship, call on the Angel.
Hello, I am Attorney Angel Hess, and I am ready to help you. Whether you or a loved one needs legal protection from an abusive spouse, cohabitant, or neighbor, I will help you. I have over 7 years' experience working as a lawyer protecting others from abusive relationships.
Stop the abuse now. Call on the Angel, Attorney Angel L. Hess at santacruzlegal.net.
All right. Welcome back.
Hey there. Okay, we all know about the eclipse coming up. We've heard about her on April 8th.
Yeah.
The big April Easter. But did you catch this press release yesterday?
Nope.
No, it came in. It says, eclipse path of day is miscalculated.
What?
Yeah, it says, by failing to account for the time it takes light to travel from the sun, a laser-based model led by the U.S. National Observatory's Measurement, Alignment, and Astronomy Administration. No, ma'am. This is the short.
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am. Yes. Has been shown to be off by 7 days and 1,843 miles. And that means that the eclipse is like coming at us like now.
Oh, this came out yesterday,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Oh, uh-huh. And what day was yesterday?
Sarah Phillips, UVM's class of 2025.
Today is April 2nd.
Yes, today is April 2nd, yeah.
Yesterday was April 1st.
You do that press release and geez, that's...
I'd call that fake news, honey. You fell for it.
Well, I read it anyway.
Did you?
Yeah. You got a laugh out of it.
Yeah, hilarious.
Yeah. Hope you did.
April Fools.
No, ma'am, indeed. Yeah, well, as we know, in reality, predicting eclipses is pretty much a precise science.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's so precise that they used the eclipse to predict the very first actual recorded date in Western history. It's called the War of the Eclipse. And because of the fact that there was an eclipse, ancient historians were able to date that particular war to a particular a particular moment in history, and everything before that is considered to be legend.
Yes, yeah, I believe we're accurate to within less than a second in 300 years of predicting.
Now you're talking about an atomic clock level of accuracy.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we can predict these things pretty well. So it's not a big mystery. But and because we're so good at predicting it, we've come up with a new citizen science project that will reveal some of the secrets of the sun to us with any luck.
Do tell.
Well, it's a plan to broadcast the entire total eclipse. Like if you're in any one location, you might.
Now we're talking. This is no longer April Fool's. This is really talking
life,
about
right.
the April 8th eclipse that's happening.
Right. Right. And as we all probably know by now, that it's going to be a considerable swath of the solar eclipse across Mexico, the United States, and Canada.
Right.
And it's a very nice large swath, and like literally millions of people will be able to see it in this swath.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's about 100 miles wide.
Yeah, exactly.
The view of the eclipse.
Yeah, and a lot of people we know are going to Austin area.
Right, because there's a totality.
Buffalo, we have friends
there.
In Buffalo, we have friends in Montreal, and Vermont.
Sure.
And probably friends in New Jersey
Tennessee,
are going to go to Pennsylvania to see it.
100%.
Right. Yeah, Tennessee is good. Anyway, so a lot of people we know are going to be in. So, and a lot of people are there, and a lot of them are amateur astronomers. Mm-hmm. So a number of citizen scientists got $314,000 from NASA to create what they call the Dynamic Eclipse Broadcast Initiative. Mm-hmm. And their idea is that in any one location you'll see the eclipse for maybe 5 minutes, a very scant amount of time. But imagine if you had a number of cameras set up along the entire length of the ecliptic across North America, and you could watch the eclipse constantly live for the length of time. I think it's like 100 minutes.
Huh. Yeah.
You would.
Well, I think you're talking about on the internet, right?
On the internet,
we're all going to be able to watch the eclipse on the internet.
And you'll see it total live.
100 live minutes.
Yeah, 100. Yeah, exactly, or 100 minutes. That's right. A totality for a total of combining all that data coming in on the eclipse. Mm-hmm. And why would you want to do this?
Yeah, why?
Why? Well, one of the reasons is that to investigate the sun, there are certain phenomena, that happen only during eclipses that allow you to study the sun more in detail.
I see.
I'm not a solar expert, but from my understanding, it's mostly about the corona. And the corona is like the atmosphere above what you might call the land and the sun. I mean, different densities of stuff.
Well, the corona is the crown around the sun.
Crown,
so I guess when there's an eclipse, it's the light that you still see outside that outlines the dark part of the moon.
Yeah, and the corona is 100,000 times hotter than the core.
So for some reason, the center of the sun light that we see is cool, and the outside edge of the sun
super hot.
Is super hot.
I guess we kind of see that with fire. Torch. The fire. It's really hot around it.
I don't think it's really hot. I don't think it's really cool in the middle of a fire. I think it's
no.
a mystery if that's the case. If the sun is cool.
Bobby,
if you look at, if you take one of those infrared thermometers, and at the candle where it's the center of the candle, just at the end of the wick, and it's very cool there.
Really?
And what's happening? It's very cool, and then as it rises, you have this mixture of carbon and oxygen and combustion happening. And actually, the hottest spot is just above the tip of the yellow, of the flame of the little of the candle flame, let's say. And so as you get higher, there's the full combustion, and that's when the heat happens up there. So that's why take your fingers and you can put out a candle by at the base of the where the wick is. You can just pinch your fingers and you can put out the candle. It doesn't burn you because the heat is above that area.
Oh, that's really interesting. I never really thought about it.
At the base of the wick?
Yeah, if you
The type of the wick, I would pay, usually.
Well, base of the flame. Yeah.
Yeah, at the base, coming from underneath, you can pinch the candle.
Yeah, you can pinch it out.
Oh, cool.
I never really thought about that being cooler. I guess it makes sense.
Above the actual candle lit, flame, because you concentrate as it goes up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
So could it be a similar phenomenon in the fusion arena?
Well, what I think it's the combination of it's electromagnetic forces. So there's these huge electromagnetic forces that are very intense, and it's taking all these elements and flinging them around, and it's not happening on the surface, but just in the corona area on the outside, where all electromagnetic energy is happening out there. And that's why, there's only a couple thousand degrees, which is pretty warm considering on the surface. But when you get out to the corona, it's like millions of degrees. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's like, as I said, it's some kind of a combustion thing on a nuclear level must be going on there, or something to create that much heat.
Well, I think it's stripping off electrons and turning into ions. So maybe that's is from
stripping off.
I don't know exactly what's going on, but it's pretty crazy.
Yeah. So anyway, the citizen science will reveal more on this by looking at it constantly for 100 minutes.
Yeah.
Now, you also have a couple of other things going on during the eclipse, like NASA, I think, is sending up some.
That's right. That's another
investigatory flights.
Yes. Okay, just a couple more things to finish on the plasma dynamics of the inner solar corona.
Oh, yes. Do tell us about the plasma dynamics of the inner
it's
solar corona.
It's 10,000 times hotter and dimmer than the surface of the sun. And so it can only be studied in a total eclipse, according to the scientists into this.
Okay.
Yes. And the part of this program is to use simpler, less expensive equipment than what they did in 2017, the last time they tried this.
Okay.
The last eclipse over Oregon. Remember, we were there.
Yes.
And so now they have smaller cameras and telescopes with a wider field of view to image the corona, specifically looking at the corona. So it's improved. Good quality, easy to use 40 millimeter telescopes and astrophotography cameras have been sent out to teams across the eclipse zone. So they'll be able to get a solid 100 minutes with the same cameras.
All right.
Yeah.
So this is the Corona crew getting
300
full
people.
100 minutes, huh?
300 people in teams along the path of totality.
That's great.
And which is, by a lot of university and community colleges. And 20 of the teams, 20 of them are fully women. Yeah. Studying the eclipse. So this gets the public involved. It seems like a great citizen science project. And they have a website. We have a link to this thing. If you want to watch the eclipse from their point of view, that's available on the internet, wherever you might be.
Right. Whether there's clouds in the sky or not, the internet will show you the best view.
Yeah, so go to drfutureshow.com/links and you'll find it.
Okay. And so that's looking for the citizen scientists.
Yeah, it's called Inside the Ambitious Plan to Broadcast the Entire Total Solar Eclipse. Okay, so that's one of the things going on. And also on another front, NASA is launching sounding rockets into the moon's shadow during the eclipse.
That's an unusual name.
Sounding. Well, they're a long time. They've been around a long time. They're solid state rockets. They can be multi-stage. They can be one stage. And they allow you to go up into the suborbital flights. You're able to go up into space. You can go from like 55 miles to a few hundred miles with a sounding rocket. And the idea here is that they will be utilized for launching 3 different times to study the eclipse. Once about 45 minutes before the eclipse, another during the eclipse, and another 45 minutes after the peak of the local eclipse.
Mm-hmm.
And that collects data on how the sun disappearance affects the ionosphere.
Okay,
when it suddenly
so we're
gets cold,
measuring before, during, and after.
right?
Okay.
And the ionosphere, creating disturbances that interferes with, or maybe we can use it to enhance communication in some way. Like ham radio operators like to use skip times for when the ionosphere is being stimulated by the sun to get long distance connections.
Oh, it can amplify your signal?
Yeah, but I think mostly they're looking at how the eclipse causes changes in our ionosphere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's between 55 and 310 miles.
Need a drink?
Yeah, I do.
Here.
Thank you. It's the boundary between the Earth's lower atmosphere, where we live, and the vacuum of space.
Mm-hmm. So we're in a pretty dry area up here in Mount Shasta. Both of us are a little more prone to...
I'm on the boundary of space itself, I tell you.
That's right. The air is getting thin, just thinking about it.
Yes, and that's why when the night falls and the ionosphere thins out, you see things in the sky.
I see. The ionosphere?
Yeah. Well, it's a thin veil
Yes.
to what's going on around us.
Well, and it's made, the reason it's called the ionosphere is because that is where the solar radiation ionizes the molecules that are there. So they have electricity, they have magnetic properties, they have a charge that gets increased or decreased depending on what's going on with the sun, right? And of course, that affects our radio communications, that affects any of our satellite communications.
Yeah, affects everything that affects our communications, for sure. But as the shadow goes across the atmosphere, it creates this localized sunset. And these atmospheric waves are like a wave that goes across the country, a perturbation that affects different radio frequencies.
Mm-hmm.
And gathering all those radio frequencies that it's affecting will create a more accurate wave. It's a really cool, interesting visual to see it, because they did one in 2017, and you can see how this electromagnetic wave travels across from the eclipse, and it goes out several thousand miles on both sides
Right.
of the eclipse.
And so there's all this ionization happening because of the shadow of the moon.
It's a big wave. I call it more of a wave than a shadow.
Mm-hmm.
A wave of how I guess when the things get colder, like at night, the ionosphere cools down and becomes less active.
Well, and if you think about the ionosphere being charged up by sunlight,
Yeah,
then
like
of
solar
course
panels.
it's like pulling the plug, right?
Right. Yeah. Ooh, I'm out of power.
we're putting the moon as a block between all that power coming in from the sun, and so now we're just getting the shadow.
And it's fun to think that at nighttime is when you get best radio reception.
Mm-hmm.
So chances are, if you're especially listening to an AM radio, like during the eclipse, you might find your ability to pick up long distance stations improves for those few minutes.
Okay. Well, we'll have to see if
We'll see if that holds up.
See,
Because
we hear
know
some
that
feedback
nighttime
about
that's
that.
true. At
Mhm.
nighttime that's true. When the whole ionosphere, but could a sporadic thing, maybe it might allow a certain range of frequencies to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting is if you look up the definition of the Schumann resonance, which is the resonant frequency of Earth, it's actually based of how radio signals bounce off the ionosphere and come back down, and as it goes around the Earth. So I think it would maybe have an effect on the Schumann resonance when the eclipse happens. I think we should take a look at that and see.
A good experiment.
Who's tracking it?
What's your theory, Bobby?
It seems like it would slow it down.
And why is that?
Instead of around because there's less ionization happening when it's happening there. And so it would take longer for the radio signals to bounce off the ionosphere because there's no ionosphere. There's not as many ions up there at the time.
Yeah.
Is my guess, but I could be totally wrong.
It's not good to put it out there, see what happens.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, this is going to be fun. As you see, NASA's doing these experiments on the ionosphere. Citizen scientists are looking at the corona. So April 8th, I believe we know the precise time, down to the 100th of a second here. What's the exact time of the eclipse? When does it begin it doesn't really begin for us on the West Coast. We don't see it at all, right?
I thought it was around noon in Dallas.
Around noon, that sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah.
And it travels about 1,000 miles an hour?
But, maybe it's a little bit, it depends. Each eclipse, it varies in speed. So I know that there's planes that are following the eclipse for a long period. So these jet planes can go about 700 miles an hour. So, at the most. So,
yeah, no, I think they should network those planes, have several planes connected with cameras.
Yes.
Interesting. Huh? Yeah, compared to the ground rallies, you'd probably get clearer images because you're above a lot of the atmosphere.
Oh boy, we're having a bit of a cough day here, unfortunately. Sorry about that, folks.
Yeah. Well, how about if we just go to a break for a second, and I will.
Let's do that. We've got some very interesting news about our local community theater here in Ben Lomond. Let me just give you a little clue what they're up to. Hang on real tight here. And I think, I want to show you something. It takes me a minute to find out just the right place to go to a break. And, let's see. Is it there? Ding, 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 ding. Is it? Well, gosh, I just don't have it handy, do I? No, I don't. I wasn't prepared for that. You know, coughs, they sneak up on you. All right, let's try this one. I think you'll like it. Here you go.
Mountain Community Theater is presenting in repertoire Oscar and Felix, A New Look at the Odd Couple, and The Odd Couple female version. America's comedic mastermind Neil Simon updated his classic play, The Odd Couple, in 2004, giving the trials and tribulations of Oscar Madison and Felix Unger a more modern approach. Additionally, Simon brilliantly translated his original work, reimagining The Odd Couple for Florence and Olive. Come see one or both at MCT in Ben Lomond through April 14th. Tickets are $25 or $20 for seniors and students.
I tell you, radio does not pause for coughing. We have a cough button. That's the best we can do. You have to reach all the way over here.
Oh, good luck.
You know, I've been using mine pretty regularly. You just need a longer arm.
I need a longer arm.
Yeah. Or you need to sit over here a little closer to the mixer.
Yeah, that'll do it. Yeah, away from my screens.
Yeah. Tough choices.
Tell me about it.
All right. So what do you have for the last 5 minutes here? Anything new?
Yeah, I think since we're on the space chapter, I think we mentioned that the plans for the next Starship link is important.
Okay.
Next
plans
launch.
for the next launch of Starship in May.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah,
Do
I think
tell.
that's interesting. And the idea, and it's something that all of us can watch very carefully, is are we online now?
We're live.
Oh, okay. I thought I was just telling you this. Well, hi, folks.
No, you've still got 5
Yeah.
minutes until we go to a 6-minute break.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so as I was saying, the next launch is expected to take place in early May, and that the goal is to bring it back to Earth safely from orbit for the first time.
Yes, that's going to be the big
Yes.
breakthrough. Every single time they launch this gigantic ship,
Bigger than the Saturn V.
they learn how it falls.
Yeah,
they
that's right.
learn how to manage it.
A big part of space travel is landing.
Yeah, the gravity wells of planets are very dangerous places to be.
They seem to have got the liftoff down really well. They got to work on the landing a little bit, is what they say. In pilot land, they got to stick the landing.
Yeah, right. Well, how many rockets are in each Falcon? I mean, each Falcon has
33 in the core, or something like that, and another ring around that. It's a lot.
Yeah.
They all have to work, and they all have to be, and they've got it all going really well. I mean, I think that the first stage going up, the second stage separation, the separation of the payload, they've got that phenomenally down. It's that final phase of landing that needs to be mastered. And so the first attempt at that will be in May.
Yeah. Well, the history of SpaceX has been to have enough test flights and to do good analysis of the failures so that each flight is actually an advancement towards the goal of full reuse.
That's
of
right.
The booster.
Yeah,
or the
reuse
rocket.
it. And the way to do it is to just keep testing it, getting it, try fix and move on to the next phase, which seems to be working.
Right.
It's a little more reckless than NASA, but a lot faster. And NASA was kind of more like that when they first started. It's like a young NASA in some ways.
Well, you're going to make a mistake, so just build it in. So what up, Bobby?
The first rockets, they would, I don't know if you remember that, like in 1960, the rockets would, a lot of them were failures off the launch pad, and they didn't really advertise that so much, and we didn't really hear about that. But later, they down and they put more newsworthiness to the launches because they were a little more assured that they weren't going to explode on the launch pad.
Yeah. It's
I've always marveled how brave they are to put the live webcast out. I mean, that's a real accountability.
Well,
feature.
NASA was brave too in the early days. The Soviets were not broadcasting their rockets.
Yeah,
they didn't want to. There's a fear of failure that's really big.
Well, and it's really big. I mean, we all watched in sadness as India's first rocket crashed onto the moon. Right?
Yes, it's a real walk of shame.
Sad.
It's really sad.
Yeah.
But the thing is not to judge them for that because you learn from your mistakes, and this literally is the truth of the matter.
Yeah. Well, what are we going to learn in the next hour? Because we're in the last 30 seconds
We're
of
going
this
to focus
hour.
a little bit more on the magic of Mount Shasta here, and with someone who's living here now.
Right.
Who's had some profound experiences to share with us.
All right. Stay tuned for some magic and mysteries and theories of all that is.
And some other news stories later.
Okay. All right, folks. This is Future Now, and we're going to cut to some Santa Cruz Voice and some Think Local first, and then we'll be back. So enjoy the music.
Okay, welcome back to the show. Yes, we find ourselves in Mount Shasta today, a beautiful, beautiful place that has had many impact on me over the years, both physically and spiritually. We find ourselves again here. It was almost spontaneous, how we actually came here because we were trying to find a place in Klamath Falls.
That's true. Yeah, yesterday the only criteria we had for yesterday was we wanted to land someplace for 2 nights because we want to wake up in the place where we do the show and then spend the night so we don't have to be moving out in the middle. And we had forgotten that we had this lovely connection with Mary on the way up.
Well, remembered that after we were failing left and right to find a place that we liked.
That's true. We kept finding places that seemed like they were going to be terrible places to spend 2 days.
It just wasn't on the standard we were thinking.
Well, I think that a lot of the places we were driving by, even though they were very beautiful, they're more set up for fishing and for camping, and they're not set up for the likes of us where we want to, set up our studio and have a podcast.
A podcast event wherever we are.
Right.
So we're on the top floor of this beautiful Airbnb now. Thanks to her connection with Bobby Spur in San Francisco, in Santa Cruz.
Her connection with Mary.
And her connection
with
Mary,
lucky enough
who runs this
have
beautiful
with us
Airbnb.
on the show now.
And Mary, welcome to the show.
Mary Donnelly.
Mary Donnelly.
Thank you so much for having me. Wow, this is really impromptu and unexpected, and I just love it.
Yeah.
It's really the part of the magic of Shasta.
Yeah, the spontaneity. And,
Yep. And then synchronicities.
Yes.
Comes
the
to you.
Connections, the community.
Yeah, we all mutually attract, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So that really brings us up. Like, how did you end up here in mystical, beautiful Mount Shasta? What's your are you from the East Coast?
Yes, I'm from the East Coast originally, from Massachusetts, and a New Englander. Maine, Rhode Island. Really hadn't been out to the West Coast much.
Yeah.
And
what attracted was there an event or somebody that you saw?
I this woman was doing energy work for me, and she did something called reconnective healing. And I had never had anyone do hands-on healing before, but I was completely open.
Was it what point in your life was this? Was this recently?
That was in 2015.
Okay. Was it after you became an RN?
Yes. At that time, I had been an RN for about 7 years. And I was just starting to be more curious about alternative and holistic healing. And
on your own? I mean, it wasn't encouraged in the hospitals now, was it?
It certainly wasn't. And it was through my own experience where I just said, enough is enough. With my own health issues.
Right.
And
so there was a breaking point in the whole
yes, there was. And I had been on medications, for depression and anxiety. And really, this is what I was going to this woman. I was seeking help with that because I had said, there wasn't a connection. It wasn't just medication after medication. It just wasn't making any sense to me. And it was also through my work as a nurse. I was an oncology nurse for pediatric oncology.
Kids cancer?
Yes, yep.
Wow.
Right out of school, I worked on that wing, and it wasn't planned. I just kind of fell into it, and I loved it for many years. And then I was getting burned out. It was one of my patients who her mother sought alternative healing for her, and it really, really made me think and opened my eyes. And
I mean, what do you mean by alternative healing? Like laying out of hands, or
for cancer treatment. And she was
going down to Mexico, and
she was exploring the cannabis.
Cannabis, the oil, the Simpson oil.
Yep, and it did bring her daughter a lot of relief. But unfortunately, she was so far along in the chemo and the radiation, and for her, she passed. But her mother became a strong advocate, and I would follow her on Facebook, and I started to explore a different world, and it just made more sense to me, a more natural world of healing. And that's really so I had this session, this reconnective healing done, and Mount Shasta came up afterwards, and Might sound well, maybe not for your listeners. I was going to say it sounds a little crazy.
Yeah.
I
Our listeners have a wide range, and crazy is in the eye of the beholder, if you will.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, if the circumstances aren't crazy, it's not as interesting.
And I've met so many more people who have similar experiences of how they were drawn to the mountain. And for me, she was doing this healing, and I saw a violet orb in my third eye, and she asked me afterwards how the experience was, and I described what I saw, and she was pretty matter of fact. She said, "Oh, that I believe that was Saint Germain. I worked very closely with him." And I was like, "Oh, who's Saint Germain?"
The violet flame.
Yes, and she goes, "That's the violet flame." And I said, "Oh, wow." Yeah. And so she pulled a picture off of her mantle that was a real picture of Mount Shasta with a violet orb, and there was
over the mountain, a violet orb over Mount Shasta. Huh?
It was like a full view of the whole mountain, and then there was an orb in the center of the picture, and there was a face behind it, and she was, "Oh, this is Mount Shasta, and that's Saint Germain." Wow. And I was like, "Whoa, where is this place?" And just the draw was immediate.
Yeah, like maybe it was some foreign country or something.
Yes, I thought it was a different country. She's like, Northern California, and I said, "Wow, I really need to go." And she told me that about a woman she went on a retreat with, and she gave me her website, and she said, "Well, if you go, you have to stay at this bed and breakfast, David's bed and breakfast." And I said, "Oh, okay." And I just, everything she told me, I followed. And 3 months later, I'm in Mount Shasta. And now...
You were in Maine?
Well, I was in Rhode Island at the time.
Rhode Island. Oh, and working in Rhode Island.
Working in Rhode Island at the Children's Hospital there.
Wow. So that was your
last
time you were in a regular job then before you came here?
Yes, yeah. I worked a regular job here too. I was.
So once you got here, you stayed here, but you also kept nursing.
I did, yes.
Mm-hmm. So what year was that?
That was in 2017, January 2017. I started the year
of the eclipse, the last eclipse.
Oh, was it?
Or, well, it was the last
Oregon.
big over
over
this part of the world. I mean, there's eclipses all the time, but that was a big North American eclipse.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I remember.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Probably a lot of traffic going up 5 here.
Yes. And up in Oregon. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I was here for that summer 2017.
Yeah, big fires were going on.
Yes, that was really new to me, being from the East Coast.
Being worried about big fires?
Yeah, I never walked outside before and smelled smoke where it was everywhere.
Wow.
I mean, you don't in Maine and Massachusetts.
How often does that happen up here?
Well, more and more, right? I mean,
well, I'm curious, just in your experience since 2017.
You mean in Shasta area? Have you had smoke every summer?
Last summer was a great summer. The year before that was tough.
A little rough.
A little rough.
Yeah, we noticed a lot of burned woods behind Shasta on the way here from Oregon.
Yes, and as you go down south,
you know how long ago that was, or was it?
That was 2 years.
Really, that's recent. Yeah, it looked pretty big.
Talent, Ashland area. Yeah.
Wow.
That was a big one.
And do they know what the causes of the fires are? Are they just seasonal? Are they, any theories?
They're,
Well, that's a big question.
it is a good question.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of climate change is what comes to mind for most people on that. But there's also people starting them. So anyway, it's a big topic.
It is.
I'd kind of, it's kind of interesting. It's happening near Mount Shasta, which is such a spiritual mountain, and maybe there's a connection between the wisdom here on the mountain and the fires that are happening.
It's interesting too because we've been protected. There was actually a fire on Shasta, the lava fire. It was 2 years ago, and so not the site we're seeing on this side. It was behind.
Yeah.
But it was really well contained. It went through the lava tubes, and it was just like wrapped around. And it could have been a lot worse, but it didn't get to that point, and they were able to contain it really quickly.
Yeah. So, do you think the mountain has a kind of a spiritual protection around
Absolutely.
it?
Yes.
Yeah. And of any particular being, or do you think it's Saint Germain himself, or?
I think that he's part of it. And a part of, the Violet Flame being here in Shasta. I mean, it's everywhere, the Violet Flame, really. But where he anchored it here.
Right, anchored in Shasta. Now, so you came here, and did you meet people who like taught you how to tune into the Violet Flame process, or was
Yes, it was. All these things never heard before. Never heard of Saint Germain, the Violet Flame, but there was this intrigue, this curiosity, this drive to want to know more. And so my time in Shasta, I've been in Shasta for 7 years now, and I've got to explore so many incredible things and so much magic. I could never have imagined my life. So very different from...
As a healer, what kinds of modalities have come through for you?
Well, hands-on healing came pretty quickly after my first time here.
Hands-on healing, like
Reiki.
Massage or Reiki massage.
I started with Reiki, yes.
Okay.
And then I learned, while I was here, I learned another modality called Lahochi. That's another hands-on healing. And now I've pretty much have adapted it to just just intuitively guided. And I do an aroma touch massage with essential oils. So I've combined hands-on healing with the oils.
So you tune into a person's body, feel where they need to be touched, massage that, and add oil.
We start by, I ask, what if they have any concerns or anything they want to work on, and we set the intention for the session, and then the energy just does the work. And
so it just flows through you.
It does. Yep. And the oils, the healing properties of the oils, assist.
Yeah, in terms of its. Now, what about your consciousness? Do you just surrender to letting this happen? And
yes, my intention is always for the highest and best, and for balance, alignment, and harmony in each and every cell of the body. So if you can, I imagine every cell in the body just completely, perfectly aligned, harmonized, and at that 0 point place. Our natural state of being. And when we're there, we're open to it all.
What do you think is possible with this? I mean, I think Saint Germain talked about immortality. Do you feel that could be true?
I do. I've met some really interesting, credible people here who've had really close experiences with the being of Saint Germain, and mystical, magical things do happen.
Well, what's a good example?
Well,
for your personal experience?
Well, from my personal experience, he's never appeared to me in that way.
More as an energy, or what?
More as a feeling. One of my first, I feel like I call it my initiation into Shasta. My first summer here, I got lost on the mountain. On my favorite trail, Southgate Meadow, and I had to spend the night. And
really,
I did, yeah. And it was what an adventure. And of course, I was asking Saint Germain for guidance, and how cool it would be if he could just appear, and that would be like really epic.
Yeah, I'd say, yeah.
But really looking back, it was more of like, it was an initiation. It was a vision quest. It was, there was no time to be scared. It was like, I was so present, and I knew I was protected and safe. And really it was like that energy of the violet flame. When fear came in, it just transmuted it completely. And I could just focus. I knew I didn't want to call for help because I felt silly, for one, because I was just not completely grounded, and I wasn't paying attention to the trail. And also I knew there's nobody up here. I mean, it's 8 hours till the sun rises. I can find a spot. And I don't want to make a big thing for everybody.
So you felt like it wasn't an emergency.
No, it definitely wasn't. I had a full signal on my phone, and I had the water. There was water nearby too. And so I was really practical about it. I was like, okay, well, I want to spend the night somewhere out in the open. I don't want to be under a lot of trees. I want to see the stars.
So this practical sense of yours just popped in, just say, like, maybe that's part of the guidance.
It totally was. I was present. I was able to transmute fear instantly. I mean, I didn't panic. I even fell in the water at one point. But when I was really lost in the woods and couldn't find the trail, that it was more fear there naturally. But I heard a voice say, "Find the water," and sure enough, I found the water, and I was back on the trail.
Yeah. So it was a clairaudience.
Yes. So some really cool things happened, and then when I was crossing the little river, I heard, "Put your phone in your pocket," which I did, and then I fell in. My phone didn't.
Phone did not
survive. The phone survived. My socks and shoes, though, were wet and very cold, so I had to take those off for the night.
You had to be in the cold for how long after that?
Oh, it was 8 hours.
8 hours. Wow,
and it got to about 37 degrees because it was August, fortunately, but it was colder up there.
So did you survived to thrive? I mean,
I did. I became like in the morning. I was like, I really don't want to put on those cold socks, so I had a T-shirt, and I had a pocket knife, so I made some socks.
Oh wow!
I didn't want to sacrifice it overnight though, because it was a important piece of clothing to wear on my. So I became like really. I don't know where it all came from, but it just
you became very creative.
I had a little celebration every hour. I was like, oh, yay. So I made it like something to look forward to.
Yeah.
And it...
So it was a real vision quest.
Yes.
Wow. And you felt guided, but sort of an inner guidance, like an intuition guidance.
Yes, absolutely. Like, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm going to go do that again. Right. But, it was, looking back...
That's what...
It was meeting the mountain.
Yes, definitely meeting the mountain. Oh, and I've had another experience of getting lost where I definitely felt like I stepped through a portal.
Really?
Oh.
What
yes.
Was that what happened there?
So that was at Red Fir Flats, one of my favorite spots where Ascension Rock is. It's like a forest of giant rocks and trees. And I went with a friend who actually was a guest. She started as a guest and then became a friend. And I took her there. It was the first time, and we were doing our own thing. And I just wandered a little ways away. I wasn't intentionally going far. And on my way, turning around, I found these rocks, and I was like mesmerized. I was like, oh my gosh, I've never seen you before. And it had the energy of like a Stonehenge. I've been to Stonehenge and I was like, wow, there's something magical here. But also, I have no idea where I am. Like it's weird that I've never seen these rocks and I didn't go very far. So I went in circles looking for the set of rocks where she was at. And, at one point I said, okay, well, today I have to call for help. I knew it was I had to do that because it was November. It was getting dark. So I called for help. And the deputy couldn't find me. I could hear him, but he was really far away. And a friend's husband who grew up here does search and rescue on the mountain. So I called him. He knew where I was. And where he picked me up, it was like 2 miles from where my friend was.
Oh,
so I knew I couldn't have gone 2 miles, and there was no trail in the woods. So I definitely felt like something. I was stepped through something.
Wow.
What makes it a portal in your understanding?
Well, from my understanding, like I guess a vortex would be different than a portal. Portal is like something you go through and you get somewhere else, and a vortex is
a distortion.
You sit in it,
or
experience it.
The frequency maybe of this, and it spins. I think. I don't know. That's a good question.
So you didn't feel like you had actually physically traversed a couple of miles, but somehow you were moved.
I was moved, yeah.
Right.
And I actually have heard afterwards that, the guy who rescued me, who knew where I was, because I described the location, and he came back and we all had tea together, and he was like describing some experiences he's had rescuing people and their stories. Mm-hmm. And some of the stories were pretty like meeting beings, like these two skiers, very
Two skiers?
Yeah, two skiers went up the mountain, and they've summited many times, probably like 20 times, and then one time they got lost and they separated, and they each had really mystical experiences of meeting light beings, tall beings.
Right.
One of them described a military base that he was taken to.
Oh.
But essentially, these beings on the mountain helps get them rescued.
I see.
Someone's asking whether or not you've heard of Telos. It's supposed to be
Yes.
a city from Lemuria that's supposed to live in Mount Shasta.
Yes. So the woman who did the reconnective healing for me, she's told me you have to read the Telos books before you go to Shasta.
The Telos books.
There's 1, 2, and 3 by Louise Aurelia Jones. I read the first one on the plane ride. I felt like I was in Lemuria. I felt like I was in Telos. It resonated to the core of my being. And
wow.
I so much so where I was in this cloud of, well, everyone knows Telos and Shasta, right? Well, that's not the case, but yeah, Telos.
The Telos Bible, Revelations of the New Lemuria, Aurelia Louise Jones. Wow.
Yep.
So what about it resonated? Did like an ancient city that you were...
Well, Lemuria resonated, the ancient civilization before Atlantis, and the way the beings
connected with each other?
Connected with each other, yes. The way they lived.
Did you, like what? Did they do hands-on healing more?
They lived in peace and harmony, and there was no wars, and
right,
there was you know, they all got along, and they had they didn't have disease, and they could heal themselves, and they would go to crystal temples for healing, and it just was like, yes, I remember this.
Seemed real to you.
Yes, it did. It was very real.
Wow.
It is very real.
So it became even more real once you moved here?
It did. It did. You know, I've met people. We've done meditations, and we've gone into the crystal city of Telos, and
yeah. Now, your experience is that like an inner peace world, or does it have a physical manifestation? Do you think, or does it even need one to exist?
Well, from what I've gathered living here in Shasta, and you know, there's a physicality to
somehow
it.
The mountain attracts that energy of some sort, right?
It supports that energy, yes,
yeah.
and it's believed that the beings in Telos, you know, they descended from Lemuria.
Yeah, and then why did they come to Mount Shasta? Is that their ancestral homeland, or
Mount Shasta is believed to be part of Lemuria before it,
really? So,
you know, before the flood,
before the cataclysm.
And the cataclysm, yes, yeah.
Oh, so there's a direct line. It's a continuity.
Yes, there's a direct connection. What do they call those lines?
Ley lines.
Ley lines, yeah.
Yeah.
I see. Now, do you feel like there's a different kind of time or frequency, or, you know, how would you characterize the different experience that you had when you felt like you were in that vortex versus, you know, normal
out of
20th
time?
century?
Yeah,
so time was not a factor.
Yeah, completely out of time, and the energy of the stones was magnetizing. I've tried to find them again, and I couldn't find them.
Huh. That's interesting. So when you did find them, was there anything unusual in the getting to them? You know, like, did you set out for just a normal day of a hike and find yourself in a unexpected adventure? Yes.
Well, that day, my intention was to bring our guest up there, because it was her first time in Shasta, and she hadn't been on the mountain, and didn't feel comfortable venturing up on her own, and didn't know where to go. And so I told her about Red Fir Flats and Ascension Rock, and it's you know, you don't have to hike it too much. You just go in there and you can sit on the stones, climb the stones, and just be with nature and the energy there.
So you just felt like it was a lovely place to recommend to someone who wasn't familiar with the area.
Mm-hmm.
And upon taking her there, you guys got separated.
We did. And her phone was in my car. And which, you know, I was thinking, oh my goodness, I can't believe I let this happen. Like, how did this again?
Oh, so you were a little guilt-ridden.
I was.
Like, I'm lost, and I'm supposed to be helping her, and her phone's locked in my car. Oh, no.
And it was just so, you know, it was so synchronistic, the whole thing. Because, you know, I was worried about, well, once my friend picked me up and he drove me 2 miles back to where my car was, she wasn't there. And I knew that she had gotten safely home. Intuitively, I knew it. I knew there was and she ended up getting a ride home with someone who was passing through, who worked at Apple where she used to work. And there was a connection there, and she was a really sweet woman. And then she was just worried about me. I was worried that she was going to be upset. So the guy who rescued me said, you know what, why don't I come over and I can kind of smooth it over. I can tell you guys some stories about rescues that I've had, some really mystical. I said, sure, come on over. And so that was so fun.
Oh, boy.
And now we're very good friends. Me and Lazan, and she moved to Shasta, and she's thriving here. And
oh boy, yeah. So everyday mysticism, I think, is maybe what I'm taking away is one of the things that you've found here.
Yes,
a lot of people have these kinds of experiences.
Everyday magic. I mean, magic's everywhere. I mean, we create it. And certainly being here, I can see it. I see it more clearly.
Wow. Now, as a nurse, I mean, I imagine you're still a nurse. You just aren't currently necessarily practicing.
Right. I am still a nurse, and I will always be a nurse.
Sure. Yeah. And so how do you bring these worlds together? You know,
how do you reconcile the differences
of, you know, extreme science and norms and the world
spiritual
of very
healing.
personal discovery?
For me, reconciling the differences meant for me leaving that world because it became very clear during COVID that, you know, I was the nurse spending extra time with people, telling them about the vitamins and things that they could do.
They weren't telling that in the hospital?
Oh, no. No
vitamin D, no?
One of the doctors laughed at one lady had asked, well, would it be helpful for me to take some extra vitamin C or vitamin D? And he literally just kind of laughed at her.
Never mind.
Said, you can try, but it's not going to do anything.
Yeah.
And so then I would have the conversation afterwards. And then I would, you know, people would come back, like they'd be sick for 2 weeks and they would come back looking for help, but they wouldn't be allowed in because they're like, well, there's nothing we can do. So I would spend the time with them in their cars, you know, telling them, recommending all the things, all the alternative things that are out there. And so the worlds were colliding for me.
Right.
I had doctors
that could get you in trouble.
It kind of did, you know, and you know for me recommending vitamins, yeah, absolutely, and for me saying, don't get that second jab. I mean, because you're really sick. I was witnessing, and it was just such a bizarro world. Like, oh my gosh, how are you guys not seeing all of this?
Yeah, I think your story about how you were asked to sign a form, and the fact that you were questioning the form and sort of not necessarily willing to sign it because of the experimental use authorization status of the remedy, and how at a certain point your employer just said, well, if you don't sign, we have to let you go, and so that was the end of it.
Yes.
Right?
Yep. Yeah, I challenged the mandate, the vaccine mandate by...
Well, how'd that come up, first of all, in your scenario?
Well, initially it was mandated, but then the hospital I worked at were accepting religious exemptions, but they said you would have to be tested twice a week and wear that, you know, awful thick N95 mask for your 12+ hour shift.
All the time.
Right, and those are actually, you know, we're trained. You're only to wear those 2 hours and throw them away. They were having us reuse them for months.
Yeah, just the people who were enforcing those laws had no concept of the actual laws that they were supposed to enforce, and they had no authority to be making those demands, but they just acted as if they did.
Oh, yes, they did. And I wasn't going to subject myself to that. That wasn't okay. So I challenged them by legally, I mean, it was my right to ask for informed consent since it was under an Emergency Authorization Act. And I had all the documentation to back it up. So I sent them that information and all the questions I had. And I knew they weren't going to be able to answer any of them.
What were some of the biggest red flags for you? That really, as a nurse, you saw suddenly this mandate was being passed down. What really bothered you about it?
Well, so many things bothered me. I mean, I knew from a year prior to the mandates, I knew it was coming. I mean, they tried to do the flu vaccine mandate, and I knew they were trying to preemptively, get us in line. And we fought that. Actually, I was part of that protest here, and we won that little battle. But from the get-go, this, was not okay. I went less than 9 months. It was, it's not even a vaccine. I mean, there's so many things wrong with it. And then I actually I saw, I had been a nurse for 15 years, and I'd seen a couple vaccine injuries in kids, and those weren't even called vaccine injuries, but I knew because I would ask these questions, and just maybe a few. Never in an adult, and I saw 3 in one day, and just me, and this one, there's
COVID
other
vaccine injuries.
Yeah,
Really, like
3 in one day,
what kind of symptoms?
Well, one of them, this woman, her arm, it's 7 days after it, and she couldn't move her arm. It was so painful. She was in agony, and there was no blood clot that was ruled out. She literally said to the doctor, do you think this could have been? And he said, I don't think so. And I was like, as soon as he left, I said, ma'am, this is absolutely from that. And if you get it again, it's going to be a lot worse. So, and he just sent her home. And I gave her a sling. I didn't know what, there was nothing. She just was sent home in agony. And this.
Well, and what
the other ones were blood pressure got so high, this woman she was having a heart attack at the clinic. So they sent her over to us.
And these were just after they got the shot, or
Yep, this one was right after.
Oh.
Well, within 30 minutes. And then the other one was two were in a week.
And there are no other circumstances that might have contributed to this?
Well, the arm was pretty convincing. I mean, that's where she got
the shot.
Yeah. Oh, and then all the people with the blood clots and the elevated D-dimers and yeah, no one was talking about. And and one thing, like before I was seeing the injuries, a whole nursing home was vaccinated as soon as they came out. Now, not one of those residents had come down with COVID in the year and a half it had been around. Well, they all came down with it after they got jabbed. And I'm just like, nobody was talking about that.
What about your fellow nurses? Did they get it at all?
Well, some of them did, yes. There was a few of us. Just, a few.
But do you feel like there was this sort of, this shroud where people were afraid to talk? They were afraid to state what they really felt?
Yes. Yes.
For fear of some kind of response that would be negative?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I had a friend who, overheard a doctor who, she's worked with for many years say, if people aren't vaccinated, we shouldn't even treat them if coming through those doors. And it was shocked because she wasn't vaccinated. She doesn't vaccinate her family. And she was like, wow, you wouldn't treat me or my family because of that? And so that was... when it became real personal, those attacks were.
Yeah. Why do you think it became so heavy-handed? What do you think it was? Just all about the money for Pfizer and those guys? You think that really is that simple?
Well, it trickled down to people thinking that was the right thing to do. It's hard for me to think that the doctors that I know and respected and worked with closely, just went with it.
Peer pressure.
So it started out without a stigma, and then it developed a stigma, and the stigma was in the wrong direction.
Yes, yes, yes.
Instead of it
You were
being like
I was
your
a conspiracy
choice.
theorist, you know.
Yeah, right.
So what did this teach you about human behavior?
Oh, so much, right?
Yeah. Well, it's hard to know.
Well, whatever it is, it all brought you here.
It did, and it, you know, I wanted to. My plan was to leave the hospital eventually, and it was time. It was time.
So did you do a particular act that got attention, and then you left, or?
Well, I had asked them to answer the 15 questions, and they wanted me to sign something that said either I was not going to get vaccinated, or I did, or even that I don't want to answer. I didn't want to do any of that until I had the consent. And so they said, okay, well, if you don't do it, you'll be terminated by the end of September.
Oh boy.
So
that's what happened. Huh?
that's what happened.
Right. And so were you able to, at that point, still find ways of supporting yourself?
Yes. Fortunately, I was in a good place where I could do that. You know, I was here at the inn, you know, the bed and breakfast, and I was exploring the other avenues of alternative healing. And that's actually the summer I met Bobby.
Right. Yeah. Now let's talk about that. We've got another 15 minutes on the show. Is there something
I think we should go in the future. Really, what the future of healing looks like.
Absolutely. What kinds of things that you and Bobby have pursued and that alternative treatments do you think represent the future of real medicine? You know, healing medicine as opposed to sick maintenance medicine.
Yeah. Well, preventative medicine, detoxification. One thing that we focus on is environmental medicine. So, or detoxing our bodies from things in our environment like heavy metals.
Now, how do we get heavy metals in our system? What is it that has made us so full of heavy metals?
Chemtrails are one.
Okay.
Okay. Well, here we go.
So there's metals in the air that are going into the ground, that are going into the food,
and the water. Also, the water is contaminated, and certainly the soil.
Are there ways of testing this? I mean, are there ways individuals can get a readout on how toxic or non-toxic the things are that they're
for water? Yes, yes, absolutely. You can test your water.
What do you test it for?
Heavy metals.
Okay.
And chlorine content, fluoride.
You want to avoid ingesting heavy metals as much as possible.
Right, and there's of course vaccinations, and many of us have had many of those, growing up, and so that accumulates. Mercury in our teeth, mercury fillings, even after they're taken out, if they weren't taken out properly, then there could be, if there's any pieces, What are the other ways?
Do you have a little? Is there a way of bringing it out of your body through any type of chemistry?
Yeah,
chelation?
There's a lot of ways to chelate. And if anyone's wanting to chelate, they should definitely talk to a trusted medical professional.
But from your point of view, it's what do you focus on?
For me, there's IV ways to chelate, to take heavy metals out of the blood through IV therapy. And some of the things that we can do are like, I like to do a shilajit. Have you guys ever heard of shilajit?
Never heard of that.
It's a resin, and it comes from a tree, and it has like 84 trace minerals, and it also has chelating agents in it, and it's just really, really good for your body. And anything green like chlorophyll or fresh microgreens.
So these are things you can eat.
Yes,
that will create.
Cilantro is amazing for like mercury. That helps. That binds to mercury. So a real clean, healthy diet full of fruits and vegetables is a good way to chelate. Saunas are a great way for for aluminum. And many of us, we do a test called the OligoScan, and it's a scan on your palm, and it measures the intracellular and the extracellular amount of heavy metals, which is a little different. It's different than a blood test, because a blood test just measures the circulating blood, not what's inside the cell.
Let's see, the AI says OligoScan is a non-invasive medical device that uses spectrophotometry to measure the levels of minerals, heavy metals, and trace elements in the body.
Yep.
That's it?
Yep, and it measures with the light refractory.
Passing light through tissue.
Because all the elements they're all in the periodic table, and so
4 points on the hand, and measuring the optical density of the elements in real time.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, get it. AI's on with that. It takes a few minutes. It can be performed on children who are 2 years and older. Results are immediate.
Yes.
Okay. And the results that you get from this are?
So, most people, like 95% of people, do have higher aluminum levels, and that we believe that's mainly from like the chemtrails, and that can get in the water.
And not aluminum foil.
Aluminum foil, that contributes, using aluminum. Oh, also cookware. Cookware leaches heavy metals.
Make like aluminum cookware.
Or cast iron, not good for you. Not good for you.
Okay, so those kinds of...
Bobby?
Underarm deodorant.
Oh, yes. Any type of antiperspirant with aluminum in it. That goes right into your lymph nodes are right there.
Yeah.
I see. All right. So the future of health is detoxing. That's one thing.
That's one thing. I mean, really, the future for what I envision is really we're all just back to nature. I mean, nature has all the answers, and our bodies are part of that. And we can heal ourselves. That's what I envision, really, truly being able to heal ourselves.
Self-healing.
Self-healing, yep. And, sound healing or frequency, like using frequency to heal the body.
Do you have experiences with sound healing?
I have experiences with like crystal bowl healing. Not a whole lot of experience, but from what I've read, like in like ancient Lemuria, these are the techniques they used or Atlantis, and that's for us.
Yeah,
I think that's what we're going to be seeing.
I certainly have spoken with many people who use, singing bowls and things like that for part of their healing process. I can think of one woman who, thought of it as the reason why she had reversed her cancer, So, I mean, it's such a complex thing of why people restore their health.
Yes,
right?
There's
complex. So many things that have to be healed. Your thoughts, your body, your habits, your environment.
Right, yes. Like, why did my soul create this for me to experience?
Yeah, that's it. And what do I need to figure out to have a better experience?
Yes, right.
So that's one of the themes of modern metaphysics is how much do we create our own reality? How much, are we fully responsible for creating our reality or what? Is it a shared thing?
You had a really great quote on that this morning.
From Nassim Haramein, yeah.
Yeah, which he's somebody I'm friends with, and I really admire his poetic nature and his deep pursuit of understanding science. And are you going to find that quote? Or should I try and summarize it?
No, you just summarize it. I think that's fine.
So he was talking about how people believe that we create our own reality, right? That's a popular kind of cliche.
Yeah.
Or is it a simulation?
Well, that's not coming
that's
from
another story.
Nassim. But the idea of creating your own reality is limited by the fact that you are in a reality. And so your creation of that reality kind of just goes out to your own threshold of participating in that reality that you're inside of. And then the reality itself interacts and engages with that creation force that you put out. And I thought that was a very sane way of looking at our ability to create reality. We're not alone. We're not the only thing in reality. and we do have an influence, and effort counts, and
it's a co-creative
process. Thing, right?
And you know, I believe that when we enter into this reality, we know what we're entering into.
Sure.
And that's crazy. For sometimes when I think about it, I'm like, wow, what was I thinking? Like to really completely forget how the veils of forgetfulness, you know, as we enter this reality and simulation. And so, yeah.
Do you find that there are any ways or techniques or opportunities to regain that aspect of your awareness that you forget so that you can be here? Like, do you have a connection to it?
Yeah, you know, that has been like my mission, part of my mission. And I am remembering, and it's in the way I feel when I resonate with things. And
Gotcha.
I had a quantum healing hypnosis session, and it validated that I volunteered for this.
Were you worried that you somehow got drafted?
Well, I volunteered. I was happy to help.
Yeah.
That's what I remember, and I was not in a human form. I was on another planet, and it was peaceful and loving, and
so it's a kind of a template from which you create reality from. Then it becomes
yes, it does. Yep.
Yeah, and so you hold that vision, and it helps bring it into this world.
It does. Yeah, that's how we create, right?
Yeah, it's interesting you have such a strong recognition of that Lemurian roots like that. And it's getting stronger by actually practicing your alternative healing techniques.
Oh yes, and it's really all about like becoming heart centered, and I mean what we can generate with the power of our hearts.
The power of love.
The power of love. Yes,
sure.
Like sacred, like heart love, like that unconditional.
Yeah, yeah. What I love about the heart nature is the way that the metaphor of the heart cells, and the way that I think it was Bruce Lipton pointed out that if you put cells from a heart in a little petri dish, one of them will start pulsing, and then they all will start pulsing as if they're all picking up on the same vibration.
Yep.
So they just have that natural resonance with each other, and that's what coming from the heart to me really means. It means that we're finding that resonance with each other where we are hearing the same reality, we're responding to the same vibrations, and those are the vibrations that are the most important ones. They're emotional, they're in my case usually joyful. Other people have maybe other emotions that they resonate with, but that heart is that unity vibe.
Yes. The first cells in the human body to form are the fetal heart.
Really?
Yep.
I didn't know that. Wow.
And I learned that through when I went to the Heart Math Institute, not in nursing school.
Yeah, that's our
That's
homeland.
our neighborhood.
Yeah,
we take
Walnut
walks
Creek.
by there all the time.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. Maria wants to know whether or not that you found any spiritual men in this community, Mount Shasta.
Yes, there are. I mean, there's certainly more women but yeah, absolutely.
Some men that are getting it too.
Oh, absolutely. And being here at the bed and breakfast that's where I get to meet. I met someone from Denmark, and he did not plan to come to Shasta. He planned to go to Ashland, actually, and he said he was detoured here. And he didn't know about the spiritual significance of the mountain, and he was just so drawn.
Really? And you were able to talk to him about this?
Yep, and he was so intrigued, and he was, he did a session with me, and I have, he was really surprised to see I have a Paramahansa Yogananda picture, and he resonated with that, and he was just really was like, wow, I see why I was drawn here to this place, this bed and breakfast, and to Shasta, and so it's so fun to hear how people are drawn to the mountain. He had never heard of it before.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the native people thought of Shasta as, one of the great guardian mountains. And I think they came here specifically for initiations and vision cross. And of course, modern natives such as ourselves find that same being. I have always felt like Shasta is actually this earth god, man, woman being.
Yes.
That is very playful, very loving.
Very loving, nurturing.
Happy to see every living creature.
Yes. I believe that there's a powerful heart opening when you come to Shasta for the first time. And you come and you're meant to be here.
Yeah.
You can just feel it.
You can feel it. Yeah. And all the stories I've heard from people who have come here. Yeah.
Well, talking about stories now, a lot of people associate.
Does it feel like coming home?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I titled my trip here when I moved out here, My Journey Home. And really, because Shasta brought me back to that God source within me. And I healed that relationship and just have never felt more connected to God than ever before.
Beautiful. Wow.
You think there's a cosmic search engine we have access to?
Here in Shasta?
Yeah, especially.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I like that cosmic search engine.
You can ask for what you want to know, and it'll come in. Huh?
Yeah, I was asking too. Back east, I was asking, and I couldn't imagine that these were the answers.
All right, now we're almost to the end of the show, so it's a silly time to bring this up, but we were talking about extraterrestrials and Shasta, and I just wanted to know
it's
what
another
you
strange attractor for
thought
this
of
area.
that.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
UFO conference every summer in July.
And you go to it yourself? Yeah?
I go to some of the speakers. I went up. I did it with a group. We did with night vision goggles. Wow, what you can see with night vision goggles. I mean, you can see activity on the mountain in the sky without the goggles, but with the goggles, there's a lot of traffic up there.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, so you saw things.
Wow.
I've heard you can that there are all kinds of interesting, fast-moving objects in the upper atmosphere.
There
for
are.
example.
There absolutely are. Yep. And
They're not just insects either, right?
definitely not.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in the 30 seconds or so, where do you stand on the ETs yourself, or do you feel like?
I've asked, the benevolent ETs. It's, really, I would love to be taken for a tour in your ship.
Come
back there. Hey, I think that would be kind of cool.
Want to go for a saucer ride?
Yes, I want to go up into a Palladian ship.
The good ones.
The good ones, yes.
Okay. All right. Well.
Okay. And your bed and breakfast. The final minute. Just tell us a little bit about this.
I have a small, beautiful bed and breakfast here in Mount Shasta, 4 guest rooms called Mary's Inn and Mount Shasta Retreat, and I will be doing wellness retreats at some point this summer and fall, and yeah.
So four people at a time?
4 guest rooms, so
4 guest rooms.
2 people to a room. I have king beds.
Oh, they're beautiful rooms, I must say.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a departure from the corporate scene, which is very nice.
It's a wonderful, healing, homey space.
Yeah,
with
very
beautiful nature all around.
Yeah. Yes, so you got views of the mountain, and
you have a sacred garden.
2 kitchens.
Noticed with all kinds of little sacred
My
statues
fairy garden.
and fairies. Yeah.
Lots of fairy and gnome activity here, and dragon activity.
Yeah, if you want to get in touch with those aspects of your being, this is the place.
Yes, you want the magic to accelerate. Come here.
Enough said. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Mary. It's been a pleasure
Thank
having
you
you
for
on.
having me. This was fun.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a website. Do you have a website that?
MarysInMountShasta.com.
MarysInMountShasta.com, and you are Mary.
I am Mary, and it's Mary's INN.
Wonderful.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and thank you, Bobby, for being out there. And
Yeah, thank you. Wow, I'm going to stay at your place next time.
Yeah.
Awesome, Bobby. I look forward to meeting you in person.
All right. And thanks, everybody out there. Have a great future now.
Yeah. Till next week. Probably be home.
Yeah, for sure.
Happy Eclipse.